my name is Gene Curl. Welcome to my channel. And if you're not new here, well, welcome back. This is the third part, I think, in the series, maybe the fourth. I don't know. I lost count. But this is a part in a multi-part series about my deconversion. And this particular episode is going to be about my mission and how my mission started to cause me to have doubts in the church. Now, I did not lose my faith on my mission. I know some people do, but I definitely did not lose my faith on my mission. I remained faithful throughout my mission. I came home after my mission, and I remained faithful in the church for a long time. But some of those cracks in the dam that eventually caused it to come down occurred during my mission. And as if you haven't watched the other parts of my video, a brief synopsis. I grew up in a kind of a Christian cult. And then when I got out of that, I joined Mormonism, which is a lot of people that are Christian would consider it a pseudo-Christian cult. Not the cult is pseudo part, but the Christian is pseudo part. Anyhow, I had this whole big long thing written out that I was going to read, and then I decided I was just going to wing it. So you're getting that version of it. I'm just winging it. So from the time that I joined the church, I was extremely faithful in the church, and I completely believed everything the church told me. And from the time that I decided to go on a mission, everything I did was to that end. And I did everything I could to prepare for my mission. I went out with the missionaries I went out with the missionaries all the time. I was called as a ward missionary in my ward. And for those of you who aren't as familiar with the Mormon Church or with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, a calling is basically a job the church gives you for which you don't get paid. And it's basically considered that if the church gives you a calling, it's the same as if God himself asks you to do that, and therefore you can't really turn it down. One of the things before my mission I was really worried about is that I had a newer pickup truck, and I had payments on it. And if I still owed on it by the time I went on my mission, I couldn't go on my mission because I couldn't have any kind of obligations. And so I was praying really hard and trying everything I could to sell it so that I could go on a mission. And I was working construction at the time. And one day I was on my way home from a job site, and they started irrigating the fields, and the wind was blowing the mist across the road, and it was freezing on the road. Well, I didn't know this, of course. And I assumed the roads would be dry because it hadn't rained in weeks. And I was driving along probably a little bit over the speed limit, and I hit this icy spot that I didn't expect there to be ice, and my truck slid sideways. And when I hit the dry spot again, I rolled 3 times and then landed upside down in an irrigation canal. Looking at the pictures, it's a wonder I survived. But my immediate thought was, oh no, my insurance is going to go up. Well, when I climbed out of one of the broken windows and I climbed up out of the canal, and then I looked at how bad the accident was, and I said to myself, holy cow, that's bad. But it still didn't really hit me how bad it was. And when the sheriff showed up, he came up and he said, I've been in law enforcement for 24 years, and I've never seen an accident this bad where somebody wasn't seriously injured or killed. And then he put his arm around me and said, son, somebody wants you alive. Well, I took that to mean that not only did God want me alive, I took it to mean that God wanted me to serve a mission. And this was how God was helping me to serve a mission, or as I called him at the time, Heavenly Father. But I believe that this was God deciding to help me by having me crash my truck so that I would get out of the loan so that I could serve a mission. And I when I'd pray, I would thank Heavenly Father for protecting me and not letting me get injured, because I didn't even have a bruise or a cut or anything. And so I was sure that I was supposed to serve a mission. So I I was preparing for mission. I went to mission preparation class. I went to a Book of Mormon class. I went to all these classes at the Mormon Institute for Religion. And when it was actually time to serve my mission, I felt like I was fairly well prepared. Just before I left on my mission, I got a subpoena to testify against my father. You know, he's back in the story again. My father had been arrested for things that I won't go into right now, but he was tried, and I had to testify against him the day that I was to leave on my mission. And so I'd already been set apart as a missionary, but I hadn't left for the MTC yet. And right after I testified, I was then given a ride to the Missionary Training Center in Provo, Utah, and I was at the Missionary Training Center for just a couple of days when my stake president called down there to let me know that my father had been convicted. I was really well prepared for my mission, and I assumed that all missionaries were really well prepared, and that I really wanted to go on a mission, felt it was my obligation and my duty. And I thought all missionaries felt that way, but I got a rude awakening and realized that most of the missionaries who serve missions, they are not going on a mission because they feel it's their duty to God or because they want to bring people into the church. They serve a mission because they're afraid that they will never get married in the temple, if they don't, they're afraid they won't get a good calling, or some of them, they were forced to by their family. And because they were there, because they felt compelled to be there rather than of their own free will and choice, a lot of them weren't exactly the best missionaries. And a lot of them were disobedient. They didn't know the rules very well. And I was actually surprised to find out that a lot of missionaries, even missionaries who'd been in the church in their entire life, that they had never actually read the Book of Mormon all the way through. I had thought that reading the Book of Mormon all the way through was one of the requirements for a mission, but apparently it wasn't. And then after the MTC, I served my mission in Hawaii, Honolulu. The Hawaii, Honolulu mission is what it was. And what I always told everybody, they would say, well, that's not a mission, that's a vacation. And I say, no, it was most certainly not a vacation. And in that 2 years, I wasn't able to go on the beach, not even once. In fact, our very first day in the mission president laid out all the rules, and he said that if we're ever on the beach for anything other than a baptism, that we will be sent home, no questions asked. He said, I'm not going to give you a chance to explain yourself. I'm not going to ask you why you're on the beach. He said, you just go home dishonorably. He said, there's no discussion about it. And he said, it's not that there's anything wrong with the sand or the water. He said, it's what's on the sand and in the water, which by that he meant scantily clad people. So there's a hard and fast rule, no beach. And so on my mission, I did everything that I could to serve God. I thought that it was my obligation to bring people into the church. And I did everything I could to that end. In fact, so I kept detailed journals on my mission. In fact, hold on. These are all of my mission journals. And a lot of places in my journal, I talked about how I was really depressed. And I said I didn't know why I would be so depressed if I was doing God's work. And I thought that maybe I wasn't doing enough. And so I would redouble my efforts. And I'd get up earlier than I was required to. And I'd read the Book of Mormon and other scriptures and study more than I was required to. And I followed all the rules, even if I didn't believe in the rules. If I thought the rule was stupid, I still followed the rules. I questioned rules. And I never had any leadership positions on my mission because I questioned rules. And it turned out that they would rather have missionaries in leadership positions who never questioned the rules but broke a few than a missionary who never broke the rules but questioned the rules. Okay, so one of the things that first caused me to have some doubts on my mission was when I was reading the Joseph Smith history. And let's see. So Joseph Smith prays, a pillar of light comes down, which I never really thought of this, but he says a pillar of light came down until it rested upon him. That's not how light works. But he says, my object, in verse 18, he says, my object in going to inquire of the Lord was to know which of all the sects was right, that I might know which to join. No sooner, therefore, did I get possession of myself as to be able to speak, then I asked the personages which stood above me in light, which of all the sects were right. For at this time it had never entered into my mind that all were wrong. Okay. At this point, when he had the vision, it had never entered into his heart that all were wrong. Now, earlier in the timeline, in verse 10, he said, in this midst of war of words and tumult of opinion, I often said to myself, what is to be done? Who of all these parties are right, or are they all wrong together? If any of them be right, which is it, and how shall I know it? So, he often wondered if all the churches could be wrong. And here he says it never before entered into his mind that all of the churches could be wrong. And I thought, oh, well, that's a big contradiction. And that caused me to have pause. But I didn't know if I should ask my mission president about it. And I didn't ask my mission president about that right away. It was one of those things that I just thought, okay, there's got to be a good explanation. So I put it on my shelf. If you're familiar with Mormonism, if you've left the church, you're familiar with the Mormon shelf. So I put it on my shelf and put it away in the back of my head. And then later, when I was with the worst missionary that the mission ever had, not my words, the mission president's words, I was the most obedient, hardest working missionary. Therefore, I was put with the laziest, most disobedient missionaries because the mission president thought I could straighten them out, which I felt was some kind of a punishment being put with these missionaries, which is another story for another day. But I was with a missionary that the mission president said was the worst missionary that mission had ever had. And while I was with that missionary, I tried to preach to all my family members in my letters home. And I wrote a letter to one of my uncles, and I tried to preach to him about the church, and he wasn't having it. So he told me about how the book of Abraham came about, and how it was from simple funerary text and had nothing to do with Abraham. And he gave me some evidence for it, and that really kind of rocked me. And I thought, well, there's got to be some good explanation for it. So I called the mission president, and to my great surprise, the mission president yelled at me. And he told me that, he said, Elder Curl, you knew the Book of Mormon is true. And if you don't still know that it's true, you need to pray until you do. But don't ask any of these other questions. So I knew then that I couldn't ask the mission president any other questions. There was later in my mission, I asked my mission president, I said, President, people ask us if we believe that we can become gods and have our own planets. Why should I tell them? He said, tell them we don't believe it. And I said, but we do believe that, President. And he said, yes, we do. So basically, my mission president flat out told me that I needed to lie to people and tell them that we did not believe in this deeper doctrine so that would get them in the church. And I often lie to people about the church because I thought they will excuse the little lie if it gets them into the celestial kingdom. They won't be mad that I lied to them. And it bothers me now that I did that. And it bothers me that I brought people into church. Now, I apologize if I'm kind of a little all over the place because I say it, I'm not going by an outline. I'm just winging this. So there was another time on a mission. I went to this house. In fact, if I ever went back to Hawaii, I could find the same house. I know exactly which house it is. It's really a unique house. But I went to Hawaii, went to this door, knocked on the door, and this woman answered the door. And in the course of the discussion, she told me that in 10 years' time, I would not be a member of the church anymore. And I promised her that I would be a member of the church in 10 years. And I said, in 10 years, I'll come back with my family, and my family will be members of the church. And of course, she didn't believe me. She just kind of laughed at me. She didn't say the same thing to my mission companion, however. She didn't say that he wouldn't be a member of the church in 10 years. The funny thing is, I'm not a member of the church, and less than 10 years after that, I was not a member. But my mission companion at the time, as far as I know, still is a member and has active. He was also one that didn't follow all the rules, but he never questioned the rules. So you see where that leads. So on my mission, I had a whole lot of experiences like that where people would bring up something about the church that it would cause me to have a little bit of doubt, but I would say, okay, I can't think about that right now. I'd try not to think about it. I'd try not to have any doubts. I'd come up with some kind of half-baked explanation to give the people to make it seem all right. And then I would, at that point, go home and try to convince myself that what I said was true. But I kept putting more and more things on the shelf and more things on the shelf. And when there's a shelf that's only designed for 10 pounds and you already have 30 pounds on it, eventually it's going to come down. Another really big thing that caused me to have some doubts. And so people who know me well know that I have bipolar disorder. Well, I didn't know this when I was on my mission. I didn't know it until I was years later, until after my mission. About the time that I joined the church, I was on a manic high, and I didn't know it though. I thought I was having a high from joining the church. I thought it was the Spirit telling me that I had done the right thing, that I had joined God's church. And it lasted for quite a while. And then it got to the point where the high left, and then I went into a really deep depression. Possibly, actually the worst depression that I'd ever had at that point. And I'd been depressed most of my life, but I hadn't had the highs. I'd just been depressed. And when the bipolar manifested itself and I had the high and then had the depression, it was really a lot. And so I didn't know what to do. So I went to my bishop, and my bishop told me that it was that I'd been on a high from joining the church, and that the adversary, they never call him the devil, he said the adversary was trying to get me to doubt and leave the church. So he said I needed to pray more and read my scriptures more, which is what I did. Well, fast forward years later on my mission, I am really depressed, and I tell my mission president that I'm depressed. So my mission president basically tells me that I have to lie to him and tell him that I'm not depressed, because if I'm depressed, he has to send me home dishonorably, and I'm probably not ever going to get married in the temple or anything like that. I'll be ashamed of my family and all of this stuff. So basically, I have the option of going home early on from my mission and every month thinking I'm a failure, or to continue my mission and suffer. So I decided to continue my mission and suffer. And so I just pretended that I was fine, but I wrote in my journal a lot how depressed I was. And I just kind of put that on my shelf as well. And then I get home from my mission, and everything that people tell me is like, you'll get all these blessings. The harder you work on your mission, the more blessings you'll get after my mission. Well, my life pretty much turned to crap as soon as I came home from my mission, and I didn't understand why. And people would say, well, it's blessings in disguise. And I would say, well, I don't want blessings in disguise. I want blessings that I can easily identify as blessings. Not that I served my mission because I thought that I was owed anything, or that I thought I was owed anything for serving my mission. And I certainly didn't think God owed me anything. But the fact that I was told that I would be blessed for serving a mission, and then everything went wrong when I came home from my mission, it kind of sent up some red flags. But I put those on my shelf as well. At this point, this video is going on quite long. So I think at this point, I am going to just call it here. There's some more points probably about my mission that I will cover that I will cover later. And I'll continue on and talk about how I wound up leaving the church and how I wound up losing my faith altogether. But for now, I think that's it for this video. If you enjoyed this video, click like. If it will help anybody, feel free to share it. If you have anything to say about it, feel free to comment down below. Just be kind. So with that, thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next part of this video. Hopefully it won't take me so long to put the next part up.